Times Magazine, and I'm here with Melissa Winn, Director of Photography, and we're in front of the Stephen P. Grove Farm, which is behind me. The Grove Farm is about halfway between Sharpsburg, Maryland to the east, where the Battle of Antietam was fought on September 17, 1862, and the Potomac River at Shepherdstown, West Virginia, to the west. So before we get going, I want to thank you all for showing up to our first Monday Facebook event. As we said on Facebook in the recent issue of our magazine, we're going to try to get out the first Monday of every month and go to locations in Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania near our offices to bring you some Civil War stories. Before we continue talking about the Grove Farm, I'm going to ask Melissa to pan around so you can kind of get a better sense of where we are. You'll notice there's two really nice Civil War trails, waysides here, and this is a pull-off that you can come and access those waysides and read about them. We're right next to the busy Route 34. You see a lot of traffic here. So there's traffic noise that I'm going to try to talk over, and if it's too bad, I'll hesitate and let it get by me. Now, like I said, we're in front of the Grove Farm, and the house is located in that clump of trees on the knoll. It's privately owned, and the owner is very sensitive to their privacy, so we're not going to go up to the house. But that's okay, because most of our story is going to take part in the fields around the Grove Farm. Now, all these fields and the house could have been developed. In 1991, it came up for sale, but the Save Historic Antietam Foundation stepped in, got loans, and bought the property, and then sold it again with covenants so it could never be developed. So thanks to Shoaf for that, and you can check them out on their website online. One of the reasons this farm is so famous is a photograph that was taken here on October 3rd, 1862. We're going to come up to the wayside here and take a look at that photograph. This is the image that was taken here, and you can see the roof of the Grove Farm behind all these officers. This was taken by Alexander Gardner. And among the men in the picture, you see Major General George B. McClellan, commander of the Union Army of the Potomac, President Abraham Lincoln, of course, Major General Fitz-John Porter, commander of the 5th Corps, and over here to the far right is Captain George Custer before he became much more famous. When Lincoln was here, he met with McClellan and Porter to discuss strategy. He visited with wounded Union and Confederate troops, and he also reviewed the 5th Corps of Fitz-John Porter. And that brings us back to our story. Imagine these fields behind me full of tents and soldiers of the 5th Corps going about their business. One of the regiments camped around here was the 134th Pennsylvania, and my relatives belonged to that regiment. George Washington Cameron and Baz Leal Cameron were in that regiment. Now, 9-month regiments like the 134th are a bit unusual. Most regiments enlisted for 3 years. But in the fall of 1862, the state of Pennsylvania wanted to get a quick infusion of men into the ranks. So they offered men enlistments for only 9 months, from August of 1862 until May of 1863. Some of those 9 months regiments didn't see a lot of action. Some, like the 134th, did. Now, the 134th did not fight in the Battle of Antietam. They arrived on the battlefield the night after the fighting had ended, but they were camped in this area for weeks afterward and helped to bury the dead. They will be heavily engaged at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, and at Fredericksburg, my great-uncle Baz Leal will be mortally wounded. One of the other men in this 134th Pennsylvania out in these fields somewhere was a sergeant by the name of Harvey Densmore. And I actually have on me right here a letter that Sergeant Densmore wrote when he was camped in this area. And Melissa's going to come in close, and you can see October 15th, 62, camp near Sharpsburg, Maryland. I don't own a lot of original Civil War items, but I do own a few items related to the 134th, including this letter. And I want to read you a portion of the letter written from these fields. I won't read it all because there's a lot of, how is everybody back home, that sort of thing. But there's 3 paragraphs that I hope you find interesting I'm going to read to you. And excuse me if I hesitate because it's written in the vernacular and it can be a little tricky to follow sometimes. But we'll begin with the second paragraph. And he's writing this letter, if I didn't mention it, to his brother Henry back home. I was very glad to hear from you all that you were in good health and getting along so well with the work. I think you're getting along much better than when I was there. Well, Henry, I expect you all are kept busy. If I have nothing to do here, I would go home and help you husk corn for 2 or 3 days anyhow. But Uncle Samuel is not quite done with me yet, digging taters, and for that reason I cannot leave. There is no use of me trying to write about anything about the war. We do not hear anything here. We are just like a lot of hogs penned up about this time of year, only not quite so much feed and a little closer penned. Well, Henry, old Uncle Abraham Lincoln made us a call the other day. He looks just like another man and rides a horse not quite as good as my own. Saddle and bridle are just about the same. If I could get a stovepipe hat and old Fran and get myself on her, I could go to Washington anyhow. And I love those passages because obviously Densmore is a farmer and he's relating his military experience to agricultural terms. He wants to go home and help his family husk corn, but he says Uncle Samuel or Uncle Sam hasn't got done digging taters yet, so he has to stay in the Army. But I particularly find his passage about Abraham Lincoln charming. It's a very small d democratic look at the president. Lincoln comes here to review the Fifth Corps, and Densmore is not overwhelmed. Instead, he says, you know, he doesn't ride a horse nearly as good as my old Fran. If I could get a stovepipe hat, maybe I could go to Washington and be a bigwig myself, is basically what he's saying. Unfortunately, Sergeant Densmore will not get to go home and help his family husk corn, and he'll never get to get that stovepipe hat and try his luck in Washington. On December 4th, 1862, he will die in the camps of disease near Falmouth, Virginia, across the Rappahannock River from Fredericksburg. His brother Henry, the same man he wrote this letter to, will journey to those camps, obtain a pass from the Army of the Potomac, and have his brother's body shipped home, back to western Pennsylvania. And Harvey and Henry are buried not far from each other in a small cemetery near Mount Jackson, Pennsylvania. I hope you've enjoyed this story of one of the 2.1 million men that served for the Union Army, and I hope that the next time you come to Antietam or Shepherdstown, you stop here at the Grove Farm waysides, read them over, and maybe even look out in that field and think about Sergeant Harvey Densmore sitting down to write a letter home to his brother. Melissa and I are going to sign off now, and we're going to go to another portion of the Antietam battlefield and be with you at a half hour or 45 minutes or so with another story about a Union soldier. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.